welcome everyone to Planning Advisory Committee of the Municipality of the County of Kings. Today is Wednesday, not Tuesday like we normally meet. It is Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. I'll begin by calling this meeting to order, and we'll start by taking roll call. We can take it electronically, I think. Let's just give it a go. We're having some technical difficulties today. So does the voting work? Can we try roll call? We're going to find out. Oh, okay. Well, we're all here, so we're not going to, do you want us to vote with our hands? Okay, we're going to vote with, do we normally vote with our hands in Planning Advisory Committee? I don't think we do. No, we normally push our buttons. Yeah. That's okay. Okay, Leslie says it'll work, so I trust her. We do have one absence today. Councillor Peckford is not here due to illness, and so therefore I would look for a motion to excuse Councillor Peckford from today's meeting. Oh my goodness. Is that my cue to start dancing? Like, I didn't know that was this kind of meeting. This is hilarious. Moved by Citizen Member Deal, seconded by Councillor Gates with an S. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to excuse Councillor Peckford? Seeing none, all in favor or otherwise, please signify in the usual fashion, which is usually pressing your button. We'll see if it works. No? Okay. Does everyone excuse Councillor Peckford? We're good. Yes, okay, great, thank you. At this point, I'm going to read the land acknowledgement, which is new custom here at the municipality, so bear with me. As this is my first or second time doing it, I can't remember. The municipality of the County of Kings is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, unceded, and current territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. The municipality of the County of Kings is a neighbor to Annapolis Valley First Nation and Glooscap First Nation, as well as a diverse urban and rural indigenous population. We are all treaty people and commit to upholding the peace and friendship treaties and working towards reconciliation in all areas of the municipality. At this point, I'd look for a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. A motion moved by Councillor Gates, seconded by Deputy Mayor McPherson. Any amendments, comments, questions, debate on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, all in favor or otherwise, please raise your hand. Thank you. Motion carried. At this point, we have an approved agenda, 3 items of business. Does anyone have any conflict of interest with any of the issue we are about to discuss? Citizen Member Morse. Yes, go ahead.
I have a conflict with item 8B.
8B, well, thank you for letting us know, and we'll get you to usual practice. Just step away from your seat during that discussion. Thank you very much. Anything further? Okay, seeing none. Next is item 6, approval of the minutes of September 9th, 2025. We did not meet in October, so the minutes are included in your agenda package. Any discussion on those minutes before I look for a motion to approve the minutes? All right, I'd like a motion to approve those minutes as circulated, moved by Citizen Member Morse, seconded by Citizen Member Friars with an S. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion as tabled? Seeing none, all those in favor or otherwise, please vote now with your hands. Thank you. Motion carried. All right. Any business arising from that recently approved set of minutes? Questions, comments, concerns, business? Okay. Seeing none. That I haven't missed anything. At this point, we'll move to item 8, regular business. 8A, we have an application to rezone 1184 Parkway Drive, PID 55047063, Port Williams, from the general commercial C1 zone to the light industrial commercial M1 zone, which is file 25-08, which will be presented by Planner Perry Bowman. Perry, welcome to PAC. Welcome to all of you as well in the audience today. I didn't get to do that at the beginning, but we'll turn it over now to Perry, who will do our presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Lutz. Okay, yes, so as advised, we are here today to look at an application to rezone 1184 Parkway Drive in Port Williams. Could I get the presentation? It's not working. Okay. Bear with us momentarily. Okay, we'll pause on that for a moment.
For those listening online, we're having some technical difficulties. And this is normally like such a well-oiled machine. This rarely happens anymore. So, you know, on the rare occasion it does, we can be a little patient. Okay, thank you. Right, so yes, rezoning application for 1184 Parkway Drive in Port Williams. Nick Levy is the applicant for this application. So, in terms of the proposal, we are looking to amend the land use bylaw of the County of Kings, with the subject site currently being the general commercial C1 zone, and the proposed change is to the light industrial commercial M1 zone to permit bulk mineral storage, or in this case, salt. So the applicant has provided us with some information about what they're proposing, but I will reiterate that this process does not provide any form of consent for development. It simply looks at rezoning of the land, and associated with that we are looking at land use conflicts, which is why we ask for information about what is proposed. So the applicant has advised that they are looking to store approximately 100 tons of salt in a building to be constructed in the kind of northeastern or eastern corner of the site, behind the existing sheet metal workshop. So this is a map of the County of Kings, with the red circle indicating the approximate location of the subject site within the village of Port Williams. So this is an aerial image of the subject site. The subject site is approximately 7.5 acres in area and is located on the southern side of Parkway Drive. It has approximately 440 feet of street frontage to Parkway Drive, and the site backs onto the Cornwallis River. The site does have a dike located or running along the rear of the subject site as well. To the north of the site, we have a self-storage facility. To the east, we have to the west, we have an agricultural equipment sales business. To the east, we have office/storage area for a building company, and then further to the east, we have agricultural uses. So this is the zoning map for the subject site and surrounds. The subject site and land to the north and west are located in the general commercial C1 zone. The land to the east is located in the light industrial commercial M1 zone, but I will note that that site has previously been rezoned to this site. So when all of the land was placed within the general commercial C1 zone, the site directly to the east was also placed in that zone and has subsequently been rezoned. We have further afield the environmental constraints O1 zone to the east, the residential 1 and 2 unit zone to the north, and then the central business C2 zone to the west. Getting my east and west muddled today, sorry about that. And the site is partially covered by the Port Williams Wellfield overlay, which runs to the north.
So, on top of the zoning, we have a number of environmental features covering this site. The environmental sensitivity overlay, the urban floodplain zone, and the protected marsh area all come into play on this site. So the site is completely covered by the environmental sensitivity area overlay, but I will note that that does not prevent any form of development. It simply triggers additional considerations at the time of permitting for any form of built form. The urban floodplain zone overlay number 1 does fully cover the site as well, but again, it does not prohibit any form of development. It simply puts in place additional construction requirements for storm surge heights and having water resistant materials. So this orange area here is the protected marshland. So as we can see, it kind of zigzags through the site, and then we have this section down to the eastern corner. The protected marshland does require variances from the marshland administrator in certain circumstances. This front portion of the site has been exempted, and so any form of development in this area does not require a variance. However, this section in this eastern corner, if any form of development was to take place in that corner, it would require a variance from the marshland administrator. But in this instance, the proposed location of development is somewhere in this central vicinity, so is outside of that marshland area. So this is our future land use designation map. The site and surrounds to the north and west are in the commercial designation. Further to the north, we have the residential designation, and then to the east, we have the agricultural designation. So the designations generally set out the intended use of the land, but also identify where changes can occur. So the commercial designation does permit all commercial zones along with the light industrial commercial M1 zone, so we can consider this application for rezoning. So this is a, I guess, hypothetical resolution map showing what the rezoning would look like in the event that this application is approved in its current form. So we would have the extension of the light industrial commercial M1 zone from this current property to the east onto the subject property, with the general commercial C1 zone surrounding the subject site. So this is a photo of the subject site taken from Parkway Drive looking south. We have the existing sheet metal workshop, and the approximate location of where the applicant proposes to develop is in the location of these shipping containers. And we can see the dike along the rear of the site in the background as well. Again, this is looking at those shipping containers, showing the approximate location behind the sheet metal workshop, and again the dike at the rear of the site on the left hand side. This is looking back towards Parkway Drive from the rear of the site, again showing the location of the existing sheet metal workshop and the proposed location of the salt storage area. And then this is looking north across Parkway Drive at the industrial uses or commercial uses on the opposite side. So in terms of public consultation, a public information meeting was held on April 8th, and 21 property owners were notified by letter mail prior to that meeting, and it was held at the Port Williams Community Centre. A notice of the meeting was also placed on our municipal social media on April 1st. 3 members of the public were in attendance along with the applicant. There was no communication received from the public outside of that meeting. During the meeting, there were a range of questions asked about the rezoning process and a range of things regarding what is permitted within the current zone versus the proposed zone, but generally the comments and feedback were supportive of the application. The application was presented to the Port Williams Village Commission on September 16th, 2025, and there were no comments or concerns raised by the Village Commission at this meeting. So, in terms of policy review, Municipal Planning Strategy Policy 5.3.3 enables Council to consider this application, and it asks Council to consider amendments to any of the zoning maps of the land use bylaw, provided the application is for a specific development. So in this case, we've been advised that the applicant wishes to develop salt storage on the land, and is to rezone land to another zone enabled within the same designation. So the subject site is located in the commercial designation, which does permit both the current general commercial zone and the light industrial commercial M1 zone. Further to this, Municipal Planning Strategy Policy 5.3.3 states the criteria to be met when considering an application to rezone land. The criteria generally relate to the zone placement policy and the impact of the proposed use and other permitted uses in the proposed zone, and an assessment of the proposal against the general criteria. So the proposed zoning to the light industrial commercial M1 zone would permit a range of additional commercial uses which are not solely focused on sales or providing a service, but due to the site's location and setback, the permitted uses would have limited impact on existing residential uses in the area. The wellfield overlay also aids in increasing setback of certain industrial uses towards the rear of the site. So the general criteria are set out in Municipal Planning Strategy Policy 5.3.7. So the assessment of these criteria included sending the application to the Port Williams Fire Chief, Nova Scotia Department of Public Works, the Provincial Department of Agriculture, the Municipal Department of Engineering and Public Works, and the Municipal Manager of Inspections and Enforcements. None of these bodies with jurisdiction have raised any concerns regarding the proposal. And the proposal is considered to meet the general intent of the municipal planning strategy and does not involve any costs to the municipality or the village of Port Williams. So we received a completed application on the 20th of February 2025, and a public information meeting was held on April 8th. Following that, a staff review was undertaken, including talking to the Port Williams Village Commission about the application. So we are here today at the Planning Advisory Committee. Following today's recommendation from the committee, it will be forwarded to the full Municipal Council at first reading. At first reading, Municipal Council will vote on whether to proceed forward and hold a public hearing. If a public hearing is authorised, it will be another public meeting where the community has an opportunity to speak directly to Council. And following that public hearing, Municipal Council will make a decision at second reading. And following that decision, there is a 14-day appeal period. So this is the recommendation for today, that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends that Municipal Council give first reading to and hold a public hearing regarding the application to rezone 1184 Parkway Drive, PID 55037063, Port Williams, from the General Commercial C1 zone to the Light Industrial Commercial M1 zone as described in Appendix C of the report dated November 12th, 2025. Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, Perry. Well, Perry was kind enough to read the motion for us. But before we ask for a mover and seconder, is there any questions of clarification for the planner at this moment in time regarding this potential rezoning? Councillor Gates, do you have a question, or are you moving it? Oh, you have a question. Go ahead. Your mic is on.
More for clarity. Thank you, Madam Chair. If I'm correct, was the former zoning M1?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. Under our repealed bylaw, the zoning was M1. Through the introduction of the Port Williams secondary plan, the land in that subdivision and surrounds was rezoned to the commercial zone. And then when our current land use bylaw was introduced and adopted, that C1 or general commercial zoning was carried through.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, I have no lights or hands. At this point, I'd look for a mover of this motion. Moved by Councillor Gates, seconded by Citizen Member Morse. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion that has been duly moved and seconded? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, otherwise, please raise your hand. Oh, I guess all in favor, please raise your hand. All against. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. Our PAC, geez, this is a throwback. I haven't chaired council in a while. Okay, motion carried. We are good to move to our next item of business, which is 8B, which is the application to rezone the property at 1025 Sherman Belcher Road, Centerville, from R1 to R3 to permit townhouses. So Citizen Member Morse has vacated his seat due to his conflict of interest. And Perry Bowman has also vacated her seat, and we've switched over to Alice Jacobs, who is the Jacob with an S. I'm really struggling with these S's today. Miss Jacob, who's going to present the next presentation, which will hopefully pop onto the screen with 0 issues. Yes, okay. The floor is yours, Alice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this application is for a land use bylaw map amendment to rezone a property located at 1025 Sherman Belcher Road, Centerville. The red circle on the map is the approximate location location of the subject property within Kings County and within the growth center of Centerville. And this is an aerial view of the subject property. The property is approximately 2.2 acres. The axis, as we can see here, is from Sherman Belcher Road. There is an existing dwelling on the property which is located here, and there is an existing driveway providing access to the dwelling. The remainder of the property is undeveloped. Most of the surrounding properties are developed with residential uses. As for the proposal, the applicant intends to build a townhouse-style multi-unit dwelling on this portion of the property to the east. The property is currently located within the residential 1-unit R1 zone, and as we know, the R1 zone does not permit multi-unit dwellings. So the proposal is to rezone the property to the R3 zone, which would permit the proposed development. And the zoning map here. So the subject property and the neighboring properties are within the R1 zone, which is the residential 1-unit. We also have the residential 1 and 2 unit R2 zone to the east. And to the north, we have the R5, which is the comprehensive neighborhood development zone, which is meant for large-scale neighborhood development through a development agreement. And the environmentally sensitive area overlay is also applied to part of the property because there is the Habitant River which runs along this portion of the property. This is the land use designation of the area. The designation determines which zones and types of uses could be permitted in an area. The property and the neighboring properties, as we see here, are within the residential designation. Both the current zoning and the proposed zoning are permitted within the designation, meaning council is able to consider this rezoning. And this is a view of the existing dwelling on the subject property and also a view of the existing driveway. And a view of Sherman Belcher Road from the property's axis. As we can see here, most of the neighboring properties are developed with residential uses. And this is a view of the proposed area for the townhouses. As I mentioned, this is the area proposed for the development. And moving on to public consultation, we received a call before the public information meeting there were concerns about privacy. So the neighbor to the west has a swimming pool, and he was concerned that the proposed development would impact his privacy. But we clarified that the proposed development would be on the eastern portion of the property and not towards the west. And during the public information meeting, there were questions about the permitted height in the proposed zone. Both the R1 and the R3 zone permit the same height, 35 feet, a maximum of 35 feet. And there were also questions regarding the planning process, specifically regarding the timeline of the process, and questions about the location of the brook on the subject property. There were also questions about whether the existing dwelling has to be maintained. It is up to the property owner whether they maintain the dwelling or not. And there were also questions about, after the PIM, we received an email regarding concerns about water capacity and also questions about well water monitoring. So well water is not regulated by the municipality. That is within the jurisdiction of the province. So we directed the member of the public to the province. But as part of the review process, we reviewed the well data for the neighboring wells in the area, and they were found to have the wells were found to have adequate quantity, and also it met the quality requirements. So this is a view of the western portion of the subject property. There is a drainage ditch along the frontage of the property, and the applicant mentioned potential future plans for a new driveway on this portion of the property. The public were concerned that the driveway might affect the drainage ditch and the overall drainage as a result. We passed on these concerns to Nova Scotia Department of Public Works, the province, and the province mentioned that they will be reviewing the drainage plan at the time of permitting. And I also believe that they have specific requirements with regards to maintaining drainage ditches and culverts. We also requested a drainage plan from the applicant, which was passed on to the engineering department for review. Engineering department requires the applicant to submit a stormwater management plan at the time of permitting. So policy 5.3.3 is what enables this rezoning. It enables council to consider rezoning land from one zone enabled in a designation to another zone enabled within the same designation. So both the R1 and the R3 zone are enabled within the residential designation. As a result, council is able to consider this rezoning. And this is an additional policy that applies to all rezoning applications. In this policy, we look at three things. A, is the proposal consistent with the intent of the proposed R3 zone? B, are the impacts of the proposed use and other permitted uses within the proposed zone acceptable? And C, whether it meets the general criteria. So with regards to A, so lands located in the R3 zones are intended to provide a transition between areas of low density and high density. As we can see in this map, the property is located between the R1 zone and the R5 zone. The R1 zone is for low density residential development. The R5 zone is for large scale planned neighborhood, which could include a mix of residential uses ranging from one unit dwellings to high density multi-unit dwellings. So it is staff's opinion that placing the R3 zone on the subject property would provide an appropriate transition from the R1 to the R5. And R3 zones are also placed on properties that would benefit from flexible development options. So the subject property, as I mentioned earlier, is approximately 2.2 acres, but the property is developed with just a single one-unit dwelling. Within the R1 zone, a 2.2 acre area could accommodate up to 24 properties and about 24 one-unit dwellings as a result, meaning the subject property with just a one-unit dwelling is currently underutilized. So it is staff's opinion that the flexible development options offered by the R3 zoning would be appropriate for the subject property. And with regards to criteria B, which looks at the impacts, as we can see in this table, both the R1 and the R3 zone permit the same types of non-residential uses. The rezoning is not going to change this. With regards to residential uses, the R3 zone permits additional building forms like semi-detached dwellings, group dwellings, townhouses, multi-units, and multi-units. So although it permits these additional building forms, the additional uses still remain residential and as a result would be compatible with the surrounding neighboring residential uses. And with regards to the proposed multi-unit dwellings, the multi-unit dwelling would be subject to additional requirements like higher side setback requirements, amenity space requirements, additional parking requirements, and also solid waste storage space requirements. And criteria C is whether the application meets the general criteria. So in this policy, we looked at various aspects such as the proposal's consistency with the municipal planning strategy, the compatibility with surrounding land uses, financial impacts on the municipality, adequacy of fire protection services, water and sewer services, and various other aspects that we see in this table. The proposal was found to be consistent with all the relevant criteria. And finally, our process. We received this application in March. A public information meeting was held in April, and staff reviewed this application, and we prepared a report with a positive recommendation, which is included within the PAC agenda package. We are at the PAC meeting. Based on PAC's recommendation, the application may go to council for first reading, and council may then schedule a public hearing for the application, following which the application will go back to council for a second reading for a final decision, and then the application enters a 14-day appeal period. So based on our review, staff are making a positive recommendation to the Planning Advisory Committee. With that, I conclude the presentation. I pass it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alice, for your presentation. Are there any questions from Planning Advisory Committee today? Deputy Mayor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. And just looking for a little bit of a clarification, I think. I'm trying to envision what the actual proposal is. I heard the term town houses and multi-unit dwelling. At this point, do we know, are we talking one building that has multi-units in it? Are we talking single-story line houses? I guess I'm just trying to envision, if we know at this point, what the proposal is.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor McPherson. It is a multi-unit dwelling. The proposal is for a multi-unit dwelling, which would look like a townhouse. So it would be a single line thing. Yeah.
I see Laura has her light on as well, if you wanted to comment, Laura.
Sure. Just as a matter of clarification, it's really a very sort of technical distinction in the land use bylaw. So a townhouse dwelling contains multiple units. It can be multi-story, just to clarify that as well, but it can be subdivided. But where these townhouses would not be on a public road, they would not be able to be subdivided. So while it looks like a townhouse, because it wouldn't be along a public road, we would classify it as a multi-unit dwelling.
And Trish?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just follow up to the whole discussion, just a reminder, this is a rezoning. So we can't guarantee that any of that will be what will occur at the time of permitting. It's just what they've disclosed at this point was their intention.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Any further questions, comments? No, I see none. Okay, so we have a recommendation, which is that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends that Municipal Council give first reading to and hold a public hearing regarding the application to rezone the property located at 1025 Sherman Belcher Road, PID 55325633 Centerville, from the residential 1-unit R1 zone to the residential mixed density R3 zone as described in Appendix D of the report dated November 12th, 2025. To a mover of this motion, moved by Councillor Gates, seconded by Citizen Member Deal. Any debate? Comments? Opinions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand. All against? Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Planning Advisory Committee. We will now move to 8C. In our business, Mr. Morse, welcome back to your seat. So we are on, there's no pages. Okay, so we're on item C, 8C. The application to add car wash facilities at 4308 Highway 1, South Berwick, as a permitted use in the rural commercial C4 zone. Alice is back on deck, so your light is still on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the final application for this afternoon is a text amendment to add car wash facilities to the list of permitted uses in the rural commercial C4 zone. I'll start with the process here. So we received this application in March, and a public information meeting was held on May 21st. Staff reviewed this application, and we have a recommendation within our report. We are the Planning Advisory Committee, and Planning Advisory Committee's recommendation will be forwarded to Council for first reading, following which Council may decide to hold a public hearing for the application. After the public hearing, the application will go back to Council for second reading, where a final decision will be made, and the application will then enter a 14-day appeal period. So the proposal, the property that prompted this amendment is located in South Berwick. The applicant intends to develop a car wash facility on the property. The property is located within the rural commercial C4 zone, and car wash facilities are not a permitted use within the C4 zone. So the proposed amendment is to permit car wash facilities within the C4 zone. A bit of a background of C4 zone. The rural commercial C4 zone was established within the rural areas to acknowledge existing commercial uses and to also enable commercial uses that serve the needs of the rural residents. So it permits a variety of commercial uses. So these are some of the commercial uses, non-residential uses that are currently permitted within the zone. As we can see here, it includes a variety of uses such as business office, building and construction contractors, automotive repair, automotive sales and rental, emergency services, gas bars, laundromats, dry cleaning depots, and a lot of other uses as well. So the proposal is to add car wash facilities to this list of permitted uses. And the reason we are looking at a text amendment for a site-specific application is because the municipal planning strategy does not have any policies that would enable this proposal through a rezoning or a development agreement. If approved by council, the text amendment would apply to all C4 zones. However, we don't have a lot of C4 zones within the county. There are only a limited number of C4 zones because of unpredictable demand. New C4 zones are usually created through a rezoning process. So these are the pink markings within the circles are the existing C4 zones within the county. As I said, we don't have a lot of C4 zones. New C4 zones are created through rezonings. We had a public information meeting in May, and we received a few comments and concerns. There were concerns about the impact of the proposal on water capacity, water supply, impact on well water, and neighboring farming operations. There were also concerns about the compatibility of car wash facilities in rural areas. There were suggestions to consider the proposal on a case-by-case basis through a development agreement rather than a text amendment. There were also suggestions to include site-specific requirements considering the impact that the use may have on water capacity. There were also questions about whether the amendment would apply to all existing and future C4 zones. The answer is yes. Moving on to policy review, policy 5.3.2 is what enables this text amendment. It enables council to consider applications for text amendments provided the application meets the vision, goals, and objectives of the municipal planning strategy. So with regards to the visions, goals, and objectives, the C4 zones are permitted within the rural areas, And the intent of the rural areas is to contain primarily agricultural and resource uses and related industries, and also rural commercial uses. So the proposed use, a car wash facility, would be similar to all the other commercial uses permitted within the zone, and it would be a rural commercial use. So it would be consistent with this intent. And with regards to rural commercial C4 zone, the intent is to contain commercial businesses serving the rural community and visitors. It is our opinion that this would be a use that would serve the rural residents. So, as I said, it would be similar to, the commercial use would be similar to all the other commercial uses that are currently permitted within the zone. And also, most of our car wash facilities are located within the growth centers, which means that the rural residents would have to travel to growth centers to access those facilities. So permitting the use within the rural areas would make it easier for the rural residents, and it would benefit them. With regard, within the rural areas, the C4 zones are permitted within the agricultural designation and the resource designation, and the intent of these designations are to prioritize agricultural and resource uses over other land uses. The proposed amendment is not going to change this intent. We are just going to add an additional use to the currently permitted uses list, meaning that property owners will have an additional option that they could develop on their C4 zone properties. And with regards to economic development, the MPS, the municipal planning strategy, intends to diversify the economic base, promote entrepreneurship, and encourage new business development. We are of the opinion that the proposal would be consistent with this intent. And with regards to infrastructure, the intent is to make efficient use of existing rural road networks, and we are of the opinion that it meets this intent as well. And with regards to drinking water, the intent is to protect and maintain the quality and quantity of groundwater resources. And similar to that, the agricultural and rural and natural areas, the intent is to protect agricultural land and minimize impact on sensitive and natural features. As you can see here, I've got red right next to it, which means we don't think it is consistent with those objectives. I will explain that in a second. So with regards to water quantity, the C4 zones, most of the properties within the C4 zones rely on well water, which means that the car wash facilities will have to be connected to well water. We are concerned that the car wash facilities might consume a lot of water. So we analyzed the existing car wash facilities and also a few other uses that are currently permitted within the C4 zone for the water consumption data. And the table that we see here summarizes that data. As we can see here, car wash facilities, the range is within nearly 300,000 gallons to 2.7 million gallons of water per year, which is a significant amount of water compared to the other uses. So, well water is regulated by the province, Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change. We reached out to the province for their guidance just so we could understand whether it would be an appropriate use to permit in rural areas. So this is what the province mentioned. So uses that withdraw more than 23,000 liters of water per day would require an approval from the province. And the approval requires the submission of a hydrogeological study, and this study is required to assess the impact of the use on the neighboring water users. So well drillers are able to provide guidance to property owners on whether this approval is required. However, ultimately the responsibility lies on the property owners to apply for the necessary approval and obtain the necessary approval. We also checked with the province if they have any other water conservation measures, and they did not mention any other measures that they have or any other measures or policies that they have. And with regards to impacts on water quality and other agricultural, natural, rural areas, again, most of the properties within the C4 zones rely on septic system, which is again regulated by the province. So our concern is that there would be a large volumes of water, wastewater going into the septic system, and the wastewater might potentially contain harmful chemicals that would end up in the drain field of a septic system, which eventually drains into the soil. And this might potentially lead to pollution, impacting the neighboring properties, agricultural uses, natural features, and also the neighboring wells. Our municipal well water supplies are protected by our well field overlays, but the private wells do not have such protection. So as I said, septic systems are regulated by the province. We reached out to the province to inquire if they have any specific regulations with regards to car wash septic systems. They said that they don't have any specific regulations. Again, the the responsibility lies it is the property owner's responsibility to treat or dispose of wastewater from the car wash facility, and it is also the property owner's responsibility to maintain those systems and prevent any adverse impact. If there are any adverse impacts, and if the province receives any complaints about the impacts, they mentioned that it would be addressed through the Environment Act. So staff are concerned about this approach, as we think that this is a reactive approach by the province. It seems like the province does not have any effective upfront regulations that could prevent issues proactively. So the burden lies on the property owners to prevent adverse environmental impacts. And we are concerned about the environmental implications and potential impacts of the use on rural residents. We also reviewed this application against the general criteria. So as I explained in the previous slides, we are concerned that the use might cause pollution and it might have negative impacts on groundwater supplies, especially private wells. And we are also concerned about the negative impacts on lake water or nearby wetlands, and also the impacts on nearby farming operations. And as a result, we are of the opinion that the use might not be compatible with the surrounding land uses, and it might not be consistent with the intent of the municipal planning strategy. So based on our review and based on our concerns about potential pollution and impacts on neighboring uses, we are making a negative recommendation to the Planning Advisory Committee. And I pass it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Alice. Okay, so at this time, questions of clarification. We don't see negative recommendations as often, of course, as we do positive ones. So just a reminder that this does go to council, whatever decision point that PAC makes today, it does go to council to then, that's our recommendation to them, and then it's council's prerogative to accept or reject as well. So just a reminder that just like every other motion, this is a recommendation to council. Council is the ultimate authority on these issues. All right, Councillor Gates, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I'm just looking for a matter of clarification. How was the water consumption for the rural car wash determined? What numbers were used?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Gates. We reached out to our finance department for the water data, the water use data. So I believe they have a water meter for well water. I'm not sure, not for the well water, for the sewer system, I believe. So they would calculate the rates based on that, what shows up in that meter. So I just know that I got it from the finance department, and I also reached out to, for the uses within New Minas, I reached out to the village of New Minas to ask them about the water consumption data. Is that what you were asking, or?
Yeah, I guess. Okay. And I can come back to you, Councillor, if you need to, but Trish has her light on. Director Javrik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, as Ms. Jacobs has indicated, we reached out to the Finance Department, specifically using Greenwood's data, because we are the water utility in Greenwood. So we have meters on that, so we were able to use real numbers for the 2 car washes in that community.
Just a follow-up question to Councillor Gates' question, if PAC would permit. Are those car washes of similar design to the, like, are they, when I think of car washes, I think there's the one out here, which is like the self-serve, but then there's also the kind where you drive through at a gas station, and they're, imagine they would be different, but I'm just curious if that like distinction was made between those. Oh, our lights are, okay. So many things happening. Okay, I'm gonna go to Director Dravik, then I'm gonna come back to you, Laura, 1 second. Okay, our lights, we got, all the mics can't be on at the same time, so when people can turn their own mics on, it means I can't do anything. So Trish first, then Laura.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe in Greenwood, we would have to double check, but I believe there's an example of each kind in Greenwood. There's a self-serve as well as mechanical.
Okay, and was there a difference in the 2 numbers in terms of water volume?
I believe Alice may be able to answer that better. I think
And
there
Laura,
was a
you're on too.
difference.
Just give me a second here. Got some.
And I recognize that this is a text amendment, so theoretically, we could never make a distinction between the two types of car wash anyway. I think just for interest, I'm curious.
As well, Madam Chair, if I may point out too, most, I believe all of the other car washes within the municipality are connected to central sewer. So this would be, the C4 zone is unique in that that wastewater is going directly back into the same property,
Okay.
which was our focus point.
Okay. Laura.
I was just going to point out that there is no distinction in the land use bylaw. Car wash is a car wash is a car wash, regardless of how your car gets washed.
Right. If we're letting them happen, it doesn't matter what they look like. We don't have any control over that. Citizen Member Morse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. One was going to be, which the Director just answered, but about if we know of any other car washes that would be serviced by a septic system. But my second one would be just reading in the report about the commentary from NSECC, and I just wanted to clarify that they're saying that they would simply allow a typical residential treatment system, and there would be no additional requirements or monitoring. Is that right?
Through you, Madam Chair, to citizen member, that is right. They don't have any additional requirements. Their approach is, as I said, more reactionary. Like if there are any impacts as a result of the use, they would deal with it through the Environment Act under adverse impacts something.
And you might not be able to answer this one, but do we know, if memory serves me correct, the C4 zone is quite limited in that there's not very many occurrences of it. Is that correct?
To you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Morse, are you asking about the number of C4 zones or the uses within the C4 zones?
The number of C4 zones.
We looked at the approximate data, and there are about 120 C4 zones, C4 zone properties within
Okay.
the county.
Thank you.
Thank you. Laura?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Morse. The C4 zone was, when the new documents were adopted, the C4 zone was only applied to existing commercial uses. Just because we can't predict when somebody's going to have an idea for a commercial use. And so with the rural C4 zones, it is on a rezoning basis that those get established. I did just want to comment on, because you did have a question about the septics. So I suspect they would probably want a commercial septic system versus a residential septic system, but the commercial septic systems that they would require would not have any sort of infrastructure related to separating out some of the icky stuff that comes off cars, such as motor oil, gasoline, and anything else that's in the road, and where septic systems do drain back into the property, but water doesn't generally respect property lines, and it doesn't respect neighbors' wells either. And just in our experience in sitting on source water protection committees, as soon as you get a petroleum product in your well, it's done. It kills your well, and the only recourse for residents in that situation would be through civil litigation. And so that's part of how staff came up with our recommendation.
Okay. Any further questions? We'll have opportunity to debate once the motion's on the floor, but any questions or clarification at this time? Okay, seeing none, the motion reads that Planning Advisory Committee recommends that Municipal Council refuse the application to amend the text of the land use bylaw to add car wash facilities as permitted use in the rural commercial C4 zone due to the potential for the creation of pollution consistent with policy 5.3.7 subsection C subsection 4 as described in the report dated subsection 4 or subsection 9? 9, sorry. As described in the report dated November 12th, 2025. Do I have a mover of the motion? Moved by Citizen Member Deal. Seconded by Citizen Member Friars. Motion's on the floor. Is there any discussion or debate on this motion? Deputy Mayor McPherson, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Through you, I can honestly say that this one is challenging for me because I see both ends of it. When I look at the long list of permitted uses in C4 zoning, I'm seeing things like dry cleaning, laundromats, funeral homes, crematoriums, heavy equipment facilities, etc. And those are high industrial uses that use chemicals as well. A car wash I don't see as differentiating a whole lot. That's one half of my feeling about it. The concern for me lies in water usage and the volume of water that is proposed and whether or not it will impact on the residential wells or other business wells surrounding, and that is somewhat of concern. I've heard in the presentation that it would be up to the applicant to do further study to see what that impact would be. I guess I'm saying that if I felt comfortably through the Department of Environment or other regulatory bodies that there would not be an impact on surrounding wells, I would be more prone to support it given the fact that there are already high commercial uses not very, very different than a car wash. So the argument that, a car wash wouldn't fit in the C4 zone doesn't stand strong for me. Their argument that the volume of water used by a car wash could impact other wells around does stand strong for me. I kind of wonder as well, one of the questions I saw, I'm not sure where it came from, around why we would be looking at a general response to permitting car washes in the C4 zone is the question, and why it's not presented as a developmental agreement, as a one-off, so you're not doing carte blanche on this types of thing. I thought that was a good question to pose. So at this point in my thinking is, I'm still undecided. I understand the recommendation of staff clearly and the reasons for that, but I'm also looking at the multitude of permitted uses in C4, and I don't really see the big distinction with that in a car wash.
Thank you, Councillor. So as a follow-up, I'll ask a question if PAC would permit me to from the chair. So one of the reasons that we couldn't do a DA is because it's not actually it's not permitted within the documents, that option doesn't exist in the C4 zone, right? I think, and I would actually, my question was going to be that I should have asked earlier during questions, is does the option exist to change the MPS to allow DAs for car washes in C4? Like, would that have been an alternative route that the applicant could have taken and then applied for a DA, which is a horrendous process, I understand, but don't seem very long. But would that, does that option exist for applicants to amend to change the bylaw to allow DAs in certain zones?
Through you, Madam Chair, to you. And by extension, Councillor, or Deputy Mayor McPherson, sorry, still getting used to it. It is an option. It would still be an option, but the thing you need to remember about development agreements is that they can only regulate things that would be regulated through a land use bylaw. It really is an opportunity to do a site-specific bylaw, for lack of a better term. So that would still be available, but the jurisdiction over septic systems falls to the province. The MGA outlines what municipalities can and can't regulate in their land use bylaws, and septic systems are not one of the things we can regulate. So you could create a policy to enable car washes in rural areas on septic systems, but you would likely get the same recommendation out of staff, given the considerations would be the same. So we likely wouldn't necessarily see that as a valid way forward.
Thank you. And one follow-up, if Planning Advisory would permit me to ask. Should the recommendation have been opposite? Should it have been an application to accept the application to allow car washes as a permitted use in C4? It would mean that all currently zoned C4 properties that were shown in that map earlier would be permitted to add a car wash or have a car wash as part of their property, should it meet all the other requirements, of course. And then any new situation where this would apply would be through a rezoning, which would then come to PAC and council in the future.
Yes, that's correct.
Because there's no C4 out there that's already zoned. Like, there is C4, but any new, like, if we're like just thinking about like Aylesford Road, if there was a property on Aylesford Road and someone thought, you know, we're in the middle of Lake Loon Lake and I want to put a car wash here, that's not C4. They would have to apply for a rezoning of that land to allow a car wash out there.
That's correct. And that would open up the property to all of the other uses in the C4 zone, similarly to what the Deputy Mayor mentioned. If I could just clarify another thing related to the Deputy Mayor's comments. I would just point out that dry cleaning depots are permitted in C4. That's not the same as a dry cleaning facility. A depot would just be where you would drop your clothing off and pick it up when it's done. It would be processed somewhere else. And staff, we did turn our minds to the other uses permitted in C4. And again, similar to what the Deputy Mayor said, we found that those other uses do have other regulatory bodies that oversee infrastructure related to those. So you will notice that a gas station is permitted in C4, but there are provincial bodies that regulate the installation of gas tanks and the transportation of gasoline products. We just didn't find a backup regulatory body for this particular type of use. As a way of clarification, I'm sorry if I've overstepped in answering a question that wasn't asked.
That's okay. No. Just to back it up one more step, so thank you, that was good. To go back and clarify just one more thing on, like, if there was a rezoning. Oh, now I've lost my thought. Around rezonings and car washes in C4. It's gone. Trish, save me.
I'm going to read your mind.
Okay.
I suspect that you were leading towards, is that something that could be addressed in the future when another rezoning would come into play?
You got it.
Okay.
Nailed it.
In theory, yes, but similar to any time that we would come to you and ultimately council, there would have to be a planning reason why you would turn down a rezoning for a car wash in the future. It can't be because you have a concern of water or pollution in the future if we've now already determined it's a permitted use. So it would put it in a really odd, well, I guess not so much odd, we would walk away from any involvement because we've now added a use that currently is not permitted. So we've put ourselves into the middle of water.
Okay. I'm just thinking of the previous application where we talked about going from R1 to R3 for a specific reason. So in order to permit townhouses. And so there's a planning reason to make a positive recommendation in that case. So if it was, so what you're saying is if someone was looking to rezone to C4 to add a car wash, there would need to be a planning reason to not accept that rezoning. Okay, thank you. We're still in debate, even though we've morphed back into questions. Citizen Member Morse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly appreciate the Deputy Mayor's comments, which I agree with completely. I think for me it comes down to what staff have been saying with regards to septic and wells, and the fact that the provincial department is, as they have told us, entirely reactionary, is concerning to me, because if there is an issue with something in the ground, by the time they're reacting, it's too late. So I think for me that's the biggest point, is a well being disturbed, or I can't think of the right word, but infiltrated with some sort of chemical, is too late. So for that reason, I support the motion to refuse the application.
Thank you. Councillor Gates, and then Councillor McPherson, I
Thank you.
think. But I
Through
can't
you,
tell who came first, so sorry.
Through you, Madam Chair. Just in a rough numbers, when I'm looking at rural car washes, the typical car wash is about 130 liters per car wash, based on 4 an hour, and a 10-hour day is about 4,000 liters. And I'm just wondering how, when we look at the larger potential numbers for the water usage, how that number was achieved.
So, go ahead, Trish.
Just to reiterate, we received those numbers from meters.
Meters.
They were in gallons. So the number was received.
Not in the metric.
Yeah.
It is confusing, sorry.
Yes. So a water meter was used to measure the water from the 2 facilities in Greenwood. Yeah. Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I appreciate the process. I mean, I can honestly say that typically when I come into council and hear a presentation, I make my mind up quite quickly, one way or the other. This time it was very challenging for me, because I could see both ends of it. I could see that extensive list of C4 utilizations and the need for this. But I appreciate the debate, because it gives me an opportunity to kind of consolidate my thinking. And Citizen Morris, I appreciate your comments, because I think you've kind of swayed me in a direction. And what I mean by that is, really, I would have no issue with a car wash, I guess, if it were connected to a municipal wastewater or water source. My concern really is around potential impact for homeowners and other businesses that have their own private wells. If I felt that the regulatory bodies at the province were able to give definite answers of how that could work and would work, then I would quickly be voting against the motion. But if I'm hearing clearly that those regulatory bodies are saying it is what it is, and if you're not happy, go the civil route, I have a real issue with that. Therefore, reluctantly and dividedly, Citizen Morse, I appreciate your comments, and I think you've probably got me to lean more towards your line of thinking here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Citizen Member Deal.
Question and a comment. Through the chair, the question is, were car washes intentionally left from C4 initially, or was it just not thought that anybody would ever want to do that?
That's an excellent question. I see Laura going for her mic first. So Laura.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Deal. When developing the list of permitted uses in the rural commercial zone, we used to have, I think these documents whittled down over 50 zones to about 28. So what we did was we looked at the previous rural commercial zones or commercial zones that were applied in rural areas, and sort of probably consolidated the lists. We did turn our minds to specific uses, but my guess would be that we'd never permitted car washes in rural areas before, and so we did not have any reason to consider them when we drafted the bylaw.
Thank you. And my comment is, I guess it's the idea that it's not so much this application for this particular car wash, but it's the idea that it's a text amendment to cover all C4 zones in the future, and even a C4 zone that may be created for another use, but then could be adapted. Once it's got zoning, a car wash could be put in. And earlier we were discussing about the type of car wash or the volume of water, but there's no way to determine that. Someone could do a single bay car wash, but somewhere's near, in a C4 or, in a non-service zone, you could do a car wash that has 12 bays, and all of a sudden, who knows what the volume is. And it really does, I agree with Citizen Morse, if the province has no guidance or guidelines for the water that's coming out of the facility, water's too important. You can't trust people's well water when there's no real guidelines to govern that, and it's reactionary. So I agree with Citizen Member Morse that the waters have the precedent. Thank you.
Thank you, Citizen Member Deal. Councillor Gates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One quick question of clarification. Are we talking monthly, yearly, when we're looking at this consumption? These numbers, what are they based on for a time frame?
Annual in gallons. Okay. Any further comments? I will speak on this if council would permit. Or, geez, man, I'm having a hard time today. PAC, where are we? It's because yesterday was Remembrance Day. If PAC would permit. So I, similarly to PAC, am struggling with this request. And for many of the reasons as stated by Deputy Mayor McPherson regarding the other permitted uses in this zone. And I feel we are situationally in a drought year. People are extra cautious around water, and I think that's very fair. But I also feel it can maybe unduly sway the way we are thinking about things this year. And I want this to be assessed on its own merits and not, because of the time at which the application was made. I know we can't avoid those things, but I don't like that's sort of the situation we're in. And I also feel slightly frustrated about sometimes the way we treat things that are adjacent to growth centers. And I've been saying this a lot. So I feel that the location of this is a great spot for a car wash. It's adjacent to the town of Berwick. South Berwick was proposed to be a growth center at one point, and this would have been likely much easier to achieve should South Berwick had become a growth center. Staff can correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but I do feel that sometimes there should be a buffer zone around growth centers or around towns whereby we have a little more flexibility on these types of things. And that's not how things work, and that's not how things are currently set up, but I do feel that this would be a great spot for a rural car wash. It wouldn't be as busy and nor consume as much water as the more urban spots. However, I recognize we can't actually control the type of car wash or how many gallons or how big it is, et cetera, et cetera. When I look at areas in my district like South Berwick, like North Alton, along these highways, Highway 1, Highway 12, that have gas bars, in Morristown, there's ATV sales and service, there's heavy equipment. So it doesn't feel fair. It doesn't feel fair to say car washes are all that different from these things. And I recognize the argument that they don't have an administrative body or a governing body that regulates them, but I do feel it's really difficult to say, to make this change or to deny, I guess, this type of application when any future one will be determined through a rezoning application, and council and PAC would have some level of control over how that goes in the future. So I think this is a really tough one. I don't like these ones at all. And my preference would be that the option would exist to allow a development agreement so that someone could put a car wash in an area that makes reasonable sense, particularly when it's adjacent to an urban area already. Like it's just one of those ones where logic doesn't apply all the time. And so I would rather see an application come forward that would allow car washes by development agreement so that we could control the number of bays or the size of the, and have some type of limitation on the amount of water potentially that could be used, or the size or the impact. So we're trying to balance water usage and neighboring properties and wastewater and chemicals against a whole bunch of other things. So it's difficult. I will actually be voting against this motion because that is where I am on it at this moment in time. But that's where I'm at. So there we are. Anything further now that I've made my comments? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please vote now. We have 4 in favor and all against, and we have 2 against, so the motion does carry, and at which point it'll be forwarded to Municipal Council for further debate and discussion. All right, thank you very much, PAC, for your thoughtful debate and your comments today. At this point, we're on item 9. Is there any other business to come before Planning Advisory Committee today? Are there any comments from the public who are with us this afternoon? Yes, come forward. You're just going to have to come up. Just because we're recorded and there's all kinds of rules, you're going to have to push the little button at the bottom of the mic because I can't do it from here for whatever reason. Oh, no, it's not going to work. Alice, could I get you to vacate your seat and I'll turn your mic on, and that way we can do public comments from there. If you don't mind, sorry. We just have to keep them as part of the record. We are live on television, YouTube right now. So you're also live. So if you could just state your name and where you live, that'd be great.
I'm Nick Levy. I live in New Minas. I was applicant 8A, okay. But actually I wanted to speak about 8C. I believe we spoke about how catching chemicals, etc., but there should be systems in place to catch those chemicals if they should disperse. In our building specifically, we were required, and I think the county would have that requirement for other types of buildings as well, that you have an oil receptor to catch things that come out of drains, etc., into the building. So there are systems in place to catch those types of things.
Systems exist. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Chris, you want to come have some comments?
My name is Chris Can. I'm from Baxter's Harbor Road in Baxter's Harbor. Sorry, I've been away, hospital, and a couple of appeals. But I did want to get back to something that arose quite some time ago, the Mi'kmaq person that would be sitting on the committee. And because of those excuses, I lost complete track of that conversation and where it went, last destined to nominating committee for a decision. But before I leave that, and I will leave that, it's about speaking and speaking to council and speaking to the various bodies of council. I come from a period when we were dealing with industrial scale wind turbines on the North Mountain, and because that was a very contentious issue, the understanding, and I think it was bylaw 51, all of which has now been changed, that basically permitted the public to speak without expecting a response, or in fact for a response not to happen. And I've lost track of that one as well. I'd like to see that somewhere made clear, because I've been working with people who are not familiar with speaking to councils and bodies. So there's that, and The others is to clarify under public engagement whether the 5-minute, I think it's been newly amended, speaking period applies to comments from the public at regular meetings. That's the second question. And again, I'm not expecting an answer. I just want to make sure these get raised. And that we really are enjoying having all the coverage that we have electronically and so on, and we call it TV. It's the TV. A long time ago, cable television stations were offered to all communities in Canada, and unfortunately people who were going to become engaged and active in development missed the boat on that. But this could be a very close second to that, and so I have a lot of respect for the recording. And just want to be sure that that if something is lost from the audio visual and it only shows up in the text notes or the text minutes that you approve, I just want to make sure that that's a very valuable resource, and would like to have some sense of that the recordings are treated with respect, because it's more likely that the people I know anyway are going to sit and watch the whole session because their issue depends on various things that happen. Okay. That's the final point. And I guess this is the unpleasant one, but as I said, I've been in appeals all summer, and health issues too, and been away from these particular things because I'm interested in how the PAC develops from here, because we're seeing that very much as a step that people should be coming to the PAC and paying attention to first, before it gets to the various, public information sessions and starts into a process that it's more important to understand the provenance of an issue, especially where we're in times where it's really beginning to look like communities are not coming forward with development proposals, but rather developments are coming to communities, and we're having the integration of those two things is not going well, just in my humble opinion. So the final point would be that I was involved in an appeal where I was challenging the text amendments having to do with the bed and breakfast, and found myself at the appeal having to deal with an affidavit that said I was not a qualified person. There's a legal term for that. To take it any further than that step. So basically disqualified on the basis that my PID number was not relevant to the issue that was attached to another property number. I have really big questions about the efficacy of using 500 feet from the PIDs rather than going to community engagement first and obviating a lot of the. So anyways, I found out after I was disqualified because I didn't live anywhere near a bed and breakfast, at great expense to the public to be demonstrated legally. About a week after it was all over and the appeal was defeated, right next door is guess what? So I don't know where to go with that kind of thing anymore, because appeal seems to be like the end of the line, and you have to be really strong to take an appeal to a municipality, large or small. So I don't know what to do with that, except I think I should complain about it. I'd be interested in hearing from, and again, not in this setting, from anybody who might want to talk to me about that. But, I was into busybody territory, and I don't like that at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Any further comments from the public? Okay. Seeing none, just for information, we do have two bylaws too that govern our committees, Bylaw 102 and Bylaw 64, which have a lot of information about how we govern the meetings here, and much of it is chair dependent. So I'm pretty loosey-goosey with the public comments, but not all chairs are like that. Okay, so that being said, we have next meeting on the agenda, which is December 9th. At 1 p.m. It's a Tuesday, so back to our regularly scheduled programming. And at this time, seeing no other items, no other public comments, I would look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Gates, seconded by Citizen Member Morse. Thank you so much. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any contrary minded? We are adjourned. Thank you so much.